Hey everyone, Harry here to talk about the first Trump administration case to reach the U.S. Supreme Court. It's a little bit complicated, but let me break it down to the basics. Trump is on a firing rampage, right? He wants to get rid of everybody in the executive branch, and he's willy-nilly fired a ton of people. But one of the people he's fired is the head of the Office of Special Counsel, which is an office that looks into the ethics of executive branch officials and also protects whistleblowers who blow the whistle on the executive branch. The person who headed that office was named Hampton Dellinger. Biden appointed him and Trump fired him. And he brought a lawsuit saying, you can't fire me. All right. Why can't you fire him? Because Congress imposed a provision when they created his agency that says you need a cause to remove this person. You can't just do it, boom, for no reason, the way we know a president could remove, say, a cabinet officer. You've got to state a reason. And there are a class of agencies for which that is the case, so-called independent agencies. And those agencies are stuck in the craw of conservatives, including conservatives on the Supreme Court for many years. They think it's a violation of Article 2, the constitutional powers of the president, to tell him you can't remove someone unless you have a good reason. So that's the underlying constitutional issue here. Dellinger says, hey, look, I was appointed by a statute to a term of years, and Congress instructed the president not to remove me unless there's a good reason, and there's no good reason here. And the president's lawyers are pushing back and saying, yes, Congress said that, but it's a violation of the Appointments Clause. It's a violation of Article 2 of the Constitution. That itself is a big issue. And it's probably one of the 5 or 6, issues that are really in the sights of conservatives in a new Trump term. I think it's likely that 3 or 4 justices, I'd say 4, already have a strong view of saying those kinds of restrictions are unconstitutional. It would be a major change. There are many agencies in Washington that have this protection in them. Some of them have several people at the top who can only be removed for cause. Some of them have a single person at the top. And in the past few years, the court has on different occasions actually shown itself suspicious of those kinds of restrictions. In the Consumer Finance Protection Board case, they found that a single person who could be removed only for cause, that was too much power aggravated in one person. So they didn't go all the way to the idea of saying you can never do this, but they could well do it, and it would mean the overruling of an old precedent, Humphrey's executor from, I think, the late 20s. That would be a big change in the law. Anyway, that is what's on the horizon in cases like Dellinger's, and the court could rule here, or in another case, it would be a big change. It wouldn't be quite the cataclysm, say, of the immunity opinion, but nevertheless, it would be a real push right that conservatives have been urging for a while to say you cannot have so-called independent agencies where the president is fettered in their ability to remove. Okay, that is the underlying issue in the case, but there's another procedural issue here that could well decide things, and that is Dellinger went to court saying this is illegal, you can't remove me, and after a quick administrative stay, the court entered a temporary restraining order. Now, we don't have to go into the real weeds here, but just to know that basically stays in place for a couple weeks, and you can't just eliminate those willy-nilly. You've got to keep them there for a little bit. And the argument from the administration is, you can't do that to us. You can't do that to the president. He's in the midst of getting his government up and running, and to say you're frozen for this period is an irreparable injury to the president. And the district court entered that TRO. The Court of Appeals, by a 2-1 vote, sustained it, but the dissenting judge, Judge Katsas, is the most sort of conservative and aligned with the conservative justices on the Supreme Court. He wrote an opinion dissenting, and that's usually a indication of where the Supreme Court might be going. And he zeroed in on this point. You can't use a temporary restraining order for this purpose. So look to the Supreme Court to maybe say something pretty limited here, which is the TRO was improper and it is dissolved. What would that mean? It would mean the case is still to be litigated, but Trump could immediately put somebody new in Dellinger's position. And after they litigate, even if his position is upheld, there's really no job to get back to. There might be money damages or the like. Okay, to summarize, because I know it's a little complicated, the big issue that may or may not come up here, but probably will in the next couple years, can there be agencies whose heads, and that's an important point here, they are the top people in an agency, so-called principal officers under the Constitution. There's principal officers, inferior officers, and regular old employees. Does the Constitution say, even though the court previously approved it, that the executive can't be restrained by having to state cause to remove them? That's the real issue here, but we might not see it play out. When it does, it's probably going to go the way of the president. That's going to be a pretty big deal, but not a complete revolution. And then there's this special procedural issue saying, don't use a TRO for something like this, a temporary restraining order, because it really imposes problems on the irreparable injury on the executive branch. So the Supreme Court could seize on either of these two, but I wouldn't be surprised if they did the procedural obstacle and said, you can't do that. So it looks to me, if I'm predicting, that the administration will win the case either in a pretty big change in the law about for-cause removal, but more likely a pretty small procedural holding that will leave for another day, but that other day will be coming. The question whether the Constitution forbids the Congress from imposing restrictions on the president's removal of principal officers, so there has to be cause. Talk to you later. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video and other Talking Feds content, please take a second to like and subscribe. Talk to you later.